Grant!
And Emmanuel McLITTLE, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of Destiny magazine, which is billed as, and I quote, the alternative choice for black Americans, unquote. Mr. McLITTLE, what do you mean when you say your magazine is the alternative voice for black Americans?
Thanks for having me here. What I do mean is that there is a voice in black America that has in the past been squashed, has not had permission to come out of its logical closet, has not been allowed to be aired in terms of the grievances that supposedly hold black Americans back. There is a whole slew of issues that affect black Americans in this country, and I'm arguing today that not only do they affect black Americans, but these issues seem to have had their effect on the entire country in terms of its direction, especially in terms of its social policies. And there is a small but growing, I say they are in the millions, of black Americans, good-hearted black Americans who love America, who have seen the policies and sometimes the spokespeople for blacks lead us off in a wrong direction and have had little to say about it. Destiny magazine was born out of a need to show the entire country, black and white, that there is a view, some call it a conservative view, that is emanating from black America that says, just a second, all of us don't think this way, all of us don't see the issues this way, and we are arguing internally. White America doesn't seem to know it, don't seem to be aware of it, but there is an internal fight inside black America about what voice really does represent us.
I have heard that recently from some other people who have your philosophy, but you wouldn't know it because of the media coverage that people like Jesse Jackson get.
Certainly.
All he has to do is snap his fingers, say, I'm going to have a press conference, and everybody's covering it.
Yes, and I believe that this is no accident. I constantly hear the media defend itself against charges that it has a particular agenda in this country, and I say that it has access to many people, myself, of the Walter Williams of this world, the Thomas Sowells of this world. Several of those last two names are some of the most brilliant minds in the world. And yet you do not see Tom Brokaw interviewing Thomas Sowell. You do not hear his name mentioned on CBS. Dan Rather would rather mention Beelzebub than talk about the fact that there is another point of view to all of the issues that affect black Americans. And it is tragic. But that particular situation has provided the kindling for which burns in the heart of a lot of black Americans today who say enough is enough. Enough representing us as though we were all angry and hostile and in a rage like what we demonstrated in Los Angeles. Enough of the crap that says Jesse Jackson's point of view is a black point of view. Enough of the crap that says we are African Americans when we are the second oldest minority in this country, and if we are not Americans, no one else here is. And enough of the whole point of view that government owes black Americans, that white America ought to be guilty for what happened to black Americans 130 years ago. There is a large number of people begging to get out of this closet that forbade them to speak in terms that were opposite from what we hear all the time in terms of black American thought. It isn't true. And I, for one, am very happy to have been born to perform the job of putting out one of the first magazines that says Bangladesh.
That is our guest, Emmanuel McLITTLE, founder and editor-in-chief of Destiny magazine. I take it by virtue of what you just said, you reject the title African American.
I reject it wholly. I reject it for two very simple reasons. First, when a particular people relate to their original national heritage, they do it usually from a standpoint of pride, a standpoint of reestablishing a link between themselves and where they came from. But in the case of black Americans, this title stuck on to our current nationality was originated from the suggestion of the philosophy that is best represented by Jesse Jackson. He actually spoke about it one day in Chicago, and it was actually spoken about it in terms of a suggestion I don't know the name of the paper that's large in Chicago, but they actually took a survey, and a large number of people in that particular segment of the country indicated that African American might be all right. That suggestion was taken, and in a matter of 1 year, a declaration was made that black Americans are going to be called African Americans. This amounts to a huge policy change that no one voted on, no one discussed, no one wanted to consult black Americans on all levels. What they did was consult the left and the rebels in our race, and begin to address ourselves as African Americans and spit in the face of anybody who objected. I am one of those people that I'm quite insulted at being called an African American, because if you look at Africa as a continent, what part of Africa did I come from?
Yeah, right.
There are 100 different parts of Africa, and there are only 1 or 2 parts that exist today that I would want to come from. Most of it I am ashamed of. I am ashamed of the Marxist kinds of governments that has actually shut off any kind of flow of life to many of the people in the continent. I am ashamed of the fact of those people, even in today, as we are trying to feed the people of Somalia. We hear very little in the media. Why are they hungry? Why don't they have food? And when you see the pictures of them starving on TV, I'd like to ask them, where are the men in your community? What have happened to them? What is your political viewpoint of how you got to be in this situation? So I'm saying that I am an American, and I want to be identified as an American. My ancestors paid dearly for the ability to be called an American, and please don't call me anything else.
All right. I'm going to and try to share with our audience just a little segment, because we don't have time to do the whole thing, some of your recent editorials. And by the way, let me tell you this: if there's anybody interested in Destiny magazine, which has so much to say, and I don't say this on the basis of seeing 1 or 2 copies, but at least a half a dozen, 8 copies, you can call an 800 number. I'm sure Mr. McLittle won't mind if I give this to you. 1-800-545-5842. That's 1-800-545-5842. Destiny magazine, the alternative choice for black Americans. We're going to go public with our guest, and in just a moment I want to skim over some of his editorials, talking about Los Angeles's new police chief getting a gun permit, and a few other things. But right now, let's take this time out. Last week we were going to talk on the telephone with columnist Earl Caldwell, but he chickened out because he said he had received threats even to appear on the telephone with me. Earl Caldwell, in case you don't know, is a columnist for the New York Daily News. He happens to be black. And we wanted to interview him on a subject he had written about, which we agreed with, as a matter of fact. But that brings us to a real mensch, a guy with real courage, Mr. McLittle, who is with us right now. What happened when people found out you were going to be on the Bob Bench?
Even before I was told that I was invited to do the second appearance, the first time that I spoke with you, obviously there were promos done.
Right.
And following that promo, and even up until the last couple of days, I talked to my secretary more than an hour ago, and still they're coming in. Threats, sometimes physical threats, mostly from blacks, one from an Indian individual, one from some group. And I don't know that you know this, but there is a group here in New York that actually writes the FCC against Bob Grant. And I was told by many of these people, particularly the black individuals who called me, said that I was an Uncle Tom, and if I went on to the Bob Grant show, that I wouldn't leave the building alive, that if what I'm going to get if I go on the Bob Grant show was a tire full of gasoline like they do in the South Africa. And I said to myself, oh, this is fantastic. This is interesting here. Here we are in 1992 in America. And here we're being told that one of the most precious rights that we have is the right of free speech. But what I discovered early on in terms of my getting this magazine out with a different point of view, what the right of free speech is not free in black America. If white America said something that's beneficial and honest, towards, and it may have a negative sound to it, that directed towards black Americans. They're called racist. It is almost as though white America cannot speak about any problem that affects black Americans. And for this reason, many of those people around this country that have beneficial things to contribute to the problems that plague black Americans must shut up. Black Americans who have many logical and wonderful educated things to say that could benefit some of the problems that plague black America must shut up, because they're going to be called Uncle Toms. So I'm saying that it is time. It is 1992. It is time that the psychological Berlin Wall that shrouds all of black America in this country be torn down. And I would have the people that threaten me know that I am beating at that wall with a sledgehammer bigger than you can imagine. And I'm going to continue to do it. I came onto the Bob Grant Show on purpose. If all of the planes didn't fly, if none of the trains moved, if the buses didn't move, I'd walk to get here to do this program on purpose.
All right. We don't hear much of this courage these days. I must tell you, I'm absolutely in awe. Let's give some of the listeners a little idea of the flavor of Destiny magazine, just a small flavor of the magazine. You have a section called Have You Heard? Have you heard? Even informed sources thought that a police chief was a policeman and as such would automatically be authorized to carry a weapon. Not in L.A. The L.A. Police Commission, who recently hired Willie Williams, see their police chief as a civilian for whom they provide police protection. This strange arrangement forced the chief to apply for a gun permit just as any other citizen would. He was granted one, but he was the first chief in nearly 26 years to be granted permission to carry a gun. It seems that California has its own policy about who carries a gun and who doesn't.
That's correct. I thought that was really strange. You can have whatever opinion you want about what took place in Los Angeles. There are those black Americans who have not been heard, many of them who write and call me, that says, why aren't we talking about the element of hoodlumism that took place in Los Angeles? We hear all about the social problems that led to the riots. We hear about the unjust Rodney King verdict. But why haven't we heard how unjust and how extremely cruel and sick and animalistic it is for whatever happened to Rodney King to have resulted in 54 people dying, $6 to $7 billion worth of property being destroyed? And why do we have news commentators, including the Jesse Jacksons and the Maxine Waters, getting on national TV, getting prime time on national TV, trying to tell America how America deserves that 6,000 or 7,000 hoodlums in Los Angeles should be making policies about how we are all to be treated and how we are to be dealt with? I say that there is another voice that has a different opinion about what took place in Los Angeles, and it isn't heard. So hear it now. There are a bunch of hoodlums for whatever reason. We can talk at a different time about the fact that many of those young men did not have fathers, about there was no love and there was no upbringing, and so they grew up with virtually destroyed psyches. All of that may be true, but the fact is a fact. Many of them are hoodlums. I watched a man, as many millions of Americans watch a young man, throw a brick into another man's head who could not have possibly had the same human soul in him that I have in me. I'd hit my own toe before I'd sling a brick like that into another man's head. And so I'm saying that this view that somehow or another we deserved, black and white and middle-class America deserve the violence of Los Angeles is absolutely insane in the opinion of some of us. And it's time that it be said in writing over the largest radio stations in this country. It's time that some of us be invited on 60 Minutes to say it. And if no whites have the nerve and the guts to say it, let their blacks stand up and help me bust open this door that forbid us to criticize those among us in our race that are absolutely a virus of poison to the entire country.
Here's another one in your Have You Heard column. TV to push interracial relationships. Most Americans are still uncomfortable when having to deal with interracial couples. That doesn't bother CBS, who intends to push that national hot button, in quotes, as they rekindle the relationship between Carol O'Connor and his black co-star, Denise Nicholas, in their return of the new in the heat of the night.
Yes.
In a recent interview, O'Connor admitted that CBS Entertainment president specifically asked for more romance from the mixed couple, but declined to speculate about the reasons for the request. Critics of the decision say that this is one more in a long line of national policy decisions being made by network TV liberal executives.
Yes, right. That's right. And I say that it is only one in many, many instances where people sitting behind the desk who write some of the programs that millions and millions of us see, and not only see, but are influenced by. And I'm happen to be an individual that have my own ideas about interracial marriage. But what I question is, why is it that we are beginning to see more of it? Why is it that an individual who does not happen to subscribe to interracial marriage call racist if they don't agree with the fact? I am seeing more and more and more black men marry white females. And as a psychologist, I wonder about that. I want to talk about that. But when you talk about it in certain circles, you are put down as being a racist. If you look at, if I answer a question from a friend of mine who called our magazine the other day and who asked me, who knew about my opinion, he asked me, would you want your son to marry a woman of a different race? I said, no. He says, well, why not? I says, well, because I like myself. And because I like myself, I want to reproduce myself, and I want to have black children. I want to have black grandchildren. And if my son marries someone of a different race, I'm not going to have black children. I'm going to have gray children. And I don't want gray children. and yet, if those kind of opinions are spouted from the mouth of a white individual, they aren't educated enough. They're racist. Something is wrong with their feelings. Something is wrong with them. They are too proud of being white. I say that if you're white and you're not proud of yourself as a white individual, something's wrong with you. Aside from that point, I would like to get to this place in our country where we transcend this whole consciousness of color without having to leap into the bed of somebody that isn't our color in order to have children. There is a different point of view for nearly all of the issues that affect us. But there seems to be only one view allowed to be expressed on the large communication networks, the newspapers, the magazines, the TV. It is time for a different point of view to be heard in this country about what really makes things shake and what really makes things moved. I want to be at the head of the line of those people in my particular race who says, just a second, I don't believe that. I think this way.
The eloquent, articulate words you're hearing are coming from Emmanuel McLITTLE, who would be the first to admit he is not a household name, not yet. If the general media has anything to do with it, you will never hear from him again. But he's being heard because he's here on the Bob Grant program. And I want to open the telephone lines. I know that there are many people calling. I haven't even given the phone numbers, would like to talk to Mr. McLITTLE. And I know this, as I'm listening to him, I'm saying, I have to have this man back again and again and again. But right now, here's Joe Dolan.
Hi.
You have in your June 1992 issue of Destiny the issue titled The Poisoning of America by the New Politics of Rebellion, Walter Williams' great story, Who is Really Behind the Trashing of America. You have cover story number 2, Bill Clinton, who gave him the black vote. That's what you say there.
Yeah, and if nothing is more insulting to me, and if I do anything else with this magazine, I want to reverse this backward thinking that defines for black America who and what races are. We have been trained almost historically to look at people who have a conservative way of dealing with the issues as our biggest enemies, as the most racist people there are. But the trick of the matter is that people who are the most racist in this country carry a liberal tag on their shoulder. And who is it that gave Bill Clinton the authority and the wherewithal to walk into the black community and simply assume the entire voting bloc of black Americans? If that isn't a racist assumption, what is? President Bush, nor did Ronald Reagan ever walk into the black community and assume he had anything. But Bill Clinton and Michael Dukakis and most Democrats of late seem to be able to walk into the black community, stand on some podium with some black representative, and suddenly be the black candidate. And I say that if black Americans knew what Bill Clinton and his lover, Jennifer Flowers, did to a little black woman down in Little Rock, Arkansas, who was swindled out of a job that was rightfully hers. This little black woman who fought all by herself with no help from Jesse Jackson, fought and won a lawsuit that threw Jennifer Flowers out of her job. If black Americans...
You mean threw Charlotte Perry out of her job?
Yes, she did. If black Americans knew about this, then they would rethink who the racists in this particular election, who the racists really are. And I say that it is time for a new and a deeper understanding of looking at all of those people who have heretofore been pointing the finger at us and teaching us who to hate. These are the people that are our biggest enemies.
Yeah, you tell the Charlotte Perry story, the woman that Mr. McLittle was talking about, Charlotte Perry. I'm amazed that the media has just put the kibosh on this. They put a lid on the story.
They have a vested interest in electing a Democratic president. And we just did a very large story as a special edition in our current issue, the September edition, where we interview Charlotte Perry, and we will go in depth about how this woman was moved and finagled out of a job that Clinton's office shuffled Jennifer Flowers in as a result of Jennifer Flowers' pressure to get a job with state government in Arkansas. And when we got a hold of this information and really dug into it to find out what really took place, and even today, Charlotte Perry still doesn't have that job, because to give it to her now would admit that a horrible, horrible racist incident took place in the Clinton administration back in Little Rock that none of the national media want black Americans to know. You get the September issue of Destiny magazine, and you will read a story about Charlotte Perry, who I call the Rosa Parks of 1990, will blow all of your shoes and socks off about this man that many people in my race are poised to vote for.
You know, the reason I'm so touched by this story is twofold. One, the story in and of itself, but two, Reed Irvine, I think you're aware of Reed.
Yes.
Yep. He tried to bring this up at the ABC television program Viewpoint last week with Ted Koppel.
Yes.
And
but he's white, so they won't listen to him.
Yeah, so they wouldn't listen to Reed Irvine. That's right. They wouldn't listen to him. And Charlotte Perry, for all they care, could fall off the earth. They couldn't care less about Charlotte Perry.
You mentioned Charlotte Perry's name to Governor Clinton, and he will shudder in his boots. She has the potential of destroying his whole game plan.
I wonder why.
Of sitting in the Oval Office on Pennsylvania Avenue. And she, not only does she have it, I have in my own possession 2.5 inches of documentation, tapes that took place in the hearings where all of it was divulged, and the hearing officer who ruled in her favor that something had taken place on an administrative level that finagled her out of her job, something very racial. And yet we have a national media that will not touch this story.
Well, for what it's worth, this microphone is open to any valid information you have, and I'm sure you know that. Let's take a phone call. If you put those earphones on, Mr. McLittle. Lazarus from Queens checking in right now. Yes.
You know, Mr. McLittle, let me say, I heard you a few months ago on a different station, and I thought you were totally wacko. Listening to you today, I agree with about 50% of the things that you said. So
I'm not totally wacko?
No, not totally. No, especially towards the ending when you were talking about you didn't want your children to mix with white children. I agree with that. But let me tell you off the back that I am a separatist. I am a black separatist. And I agree wholeheartedly that African people, black people in this country, do not have to kiss anybody's boots. We don't have to listen to anybody. I feel, in fact, that black people are far superior to white people. And I find it interesting that you...
What a racist statement. Now, if I said white people were superior to black people, you'd correctly call me a racist. Isn't that interesting?
But you've implied it, Bob. Matter of fact, to this guy earlier today. Anyway, Bob, I want to talk to Mr. McLittle. I can talk to you some other time. Oh. But anyway, Mr. McLittle, I find it interesting that I'm listening to you
Let me ask you something, sir.
Yeah.
Does it make any sense? Do you see anywhere in the animal kingdom for the stronger of the animals to be overtaken by the weaker.
No, I
Do you see that anywhere, sir?
No, I agree with you.
What do you mean? What do you mean black people are superior to white
Good.
people?
Let me tell
That's
you
kind of
why.
insane. Did you not call me nuts just a second ago?
Let me tell you why I'm saying what I'm saying. I don't know if you have ever traveled outside of this country. I've been to the Caribbean, I've been to African countries, and I've been to a few European countries.
How about Africa?
Yeah, I've been to African countries.
And you were surrounded by black folk?
Yes, I was.
What did you come back here for?
Okay, the reason why is because my ancestry is here. This is why I said I'm a black separatist. I do not feel that we should have to live around a race of people for hundreds and hundreds of years
But then now tell me, when you were in Africa surrounded by blacks, why didn't you stay there?
Okay, because again, my ancestry, my family, my roots are here. This is why I am a black separatist. I would prefer my people to separate and have formed separate lands here in this country, because we have just as much right here as the European or the Caucasian has. But
well,
I don't feel we should leave with them.
It's really not feasible. It's not possible to do.
Bob,
No. It's
Bob,
not
it is possible. You're saying it's not possible because that's the perception you want us to have.
No,
it
not
is
at
possible.
all. Not at all.
The state of Israel could have been formulated. We hear talk right now in Europe about the Yugoslavs, the Croatians, different parts of Germany. They want to formulate their own land. They want to be sovereign. They want to be autonomous.
But what I'm saying to you, sir, is there are black countries in Africa that you could go to and live amongst all blacks.
Why?
90% black.
Why?
And because you say that you're separatist, you want to be separate, you don't want to live with whites. I think that this is an insane comment of yours. But there is a simple solution. There are discount fares that Pan Am offers from New York to Liberia. You could go there every weekend, you see?
All right, I wish we had more time for this discourse between you and Lazarus. That's why, Mr. McLittle, you're going to have to come back again, and not at the 6 o'clock hour. But right now, we take this time out. And don't contact me to find out about Destiny. Call an 800 number, 1-800-545-5842. 1-800-545-5842. And you can get all the information you want. If you prefer to write, Post Office Box 19284. That's Post Office Box 19284, Lansing, Michigan 48901. Lansing, Michigan 48901. This magazine is absolutely packed with very, very current stories and stories you will not get anywhere else. We can't even scratch the surface here. Let's take another phone call. Rich, you're on WABC. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, gentlemen. Mr. McLittle, listened to you a few times over different radio stations.
Hello, sir.
I can just about agree with just about everything you say as a conservative, with the exception of the fact that we're not hyphenated Americans. We are. Anything outside of that is dead to reality.
Well, that's okay for you to be one. I'm not one. That's okay.
But I'm saying it's not only a difference among European Americans, Asian Americans, or African Americans, but you have a different culture among Jews, Irish, Italian, Spanish. And that difference, like Dr. Poussin says, the noted black psychiatrist, should be respected. It's not an amalgamated nation. It's a polyglot.
The thing that I disagree with, the thing that is uniquely American, is the kind of constitution that brings us all together. There are similarities in all races that we all come to America for. And the thing that I see rather sad is the fact that people are coming to this country now, and even those people who live here have a different agenda, have a different view of America. When it was much more racist in the 20s or 30s, you dared not call blacks by some other name. They were Americans, and I say that it is time that black individuals, blacks all over this country, join America. We have been taught for too long that we were not part of America, that we were second-class citizens, that we were this or we were that. I say that there are a large number of black Americans that do not agree with this hyphenated label on their citizenship. I am an American citizen that happened to be black. I will never teach a child of mine that they are anything other than a McLittle, an American citizen that just happened to be black. And if I could, I would remove this whole consciousness. Imagine getting up in the morning and looking in the mirror and declaring, I'm black and I'm proud, or I'm some... That's insane. Normal people don't get up and relate to what color they are. They brush their teeth, they wash their face, and they are immediately into what it is that sets before them that day. We've got one of the problems that we have in our race, one of the things that is backfiring on us, and I suggest to you that it is backfiring horribly, and that is this whole fixation of what color we are. We are Americans. There is much more to you than your color. Why do you and I, if you saw me on a subway somewhere in New York, why would you relate to me only as a black man? Wouldn't you want to know what's happening to me in my life, where I've been in my 44 years, what kind of wisdom may rest between my ears? I would want to know that from you, and it would hardly even occur to me that you were black.
All right. In other words, what you're saying is the civil rights movement, as I first understood it, or thought I understood it, was supposed to be that we judge each other
By
as
the character.
individuals.
That's right.
As individuals.
But now we're supposed to be judged on the color of our skin. And this is something that has been very subtle that has taken place. This new breed of leaders who have spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 trillion trying to fix all of the social problems created out of the racial differences. It's insane. It's time to reverse it.
We're going to conclude with Mr. McLittle in just a moment. On the line, hello, Jim. Are you there, Jim? Jim, hello? Jim? All right. Looks like Jim's not there. Let's try David. David, are you there? Hello, David. What do we have, a problem here, Tony? We got a problem? No? All right, let's try Bob. Hello, Bob.
Good evening, Mr. Grant. Mr. McLittle, I just want to share something with you.
Okay.
Some years ago, when I was at a period of my life when I felt very spiritually lost, I went to a bookstore and took out a book on spiritual philosophy.
Yeah.
And it had, the title of the book was The Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. And there was one line from it I never forgot. It was a quote from a quote. I don't remember the original source of the literature within a mission, but the line was, there is a race of men apart. And I feel that you are part of that race of men apart, people who seek the truth and love the beauty of creation.
And love the truth.
And I feel that...
love people beyond their skins. And I hate, and I feel a deep sadness when I look at some young people, young black people, who are, a quarter of us are in prison. And no telling how many of us will never get out of high school. And I say that I see deeply what is causing our problems is inside our own race. And nobody wants to say it. Everybody wants to blame America. Everybody wants to blame white people. But I say, what is killing black children, what is sticking needles in black children's arm, what is giving black people AIDS, what is putting black men in prison, is a sickness that pervades our race inside of our homes, inside of our churches, and is oozing out of our politics that is destroying us one at a time.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for any more calls. A lot of people tried to get through to talk to you, to question you, or some to even argue with you, but unfortunately, the time is already gone. We want to thank you for coming in. We want to commend you for your courage, and hopefully more people will be reading your magazine and will be listening to the truth. Mr. McLittle, you're going to have to come back. You know that, don't you?
I loved it.
Lansing, Michigan isn't that far away.
What they say about you isn't true. I sense it.
Okay. That slams the lid on things for today. Until Wednesday, remember there's a Detroit Tiger baseball game tomorrow. Until Wednesday, a doubleheader. This is Bob Grant reminding you, your influence counts. Use it.
WABC, New York.
I gotta get out of here. It's 7 o'clock.